will now come to order. Welcome to the January 21st, 2021 meeting of the City of Raleigh Appearance Commission. My name is Corey Bates and I'm the chair of the commission. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are conducting this meeting using a remote electronic platform. I would ask for your patience today as we proceed. There may be slight delays as we transition between speakers, participants, and presentations. The Commission is charged to provide guidance, advice, and recommendations regarding the visual quality, aesthetic characteristics of the City of Raleigh. The members of the Commission represent a varied field of expertise and interest in the quality of design in Raleigh. Now I'd like to ask staff member Carter Pettibone to briefly explain for the participants how we will be conducting today's meeting. Carter.
Thank you. My name is Carter Pettibone with the Raleigh Planning and Development Department. We're going to proceed very similar to a regular meeting with a few minor adjustments. If at any time a participant has issues with the technology, please send a message to the moderator. Aaron Morton is moderating the meeting. The chat function has been disabled for the meeting for all participants and the commission members, except for the ability to message the moderator if you have technical difficulties. For each administrative alternate case, a city staff member will provide a brief introduction and presentation. The applicant will then be acknowledged to present their case and have 15 minutes to do so. Speakers for the applicant are asked to provide their name and address for the record. Following the presentation, commission members will be given an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and staff. The commission will then hear from any other participants who would like to speak on the request. I believe we have two people for the first case that would like to speak. When all comments from the applicant, staff, and other participants are complete, the commission chair will bring the item back to the table for deliberation. The commission members will then deliberate on the item and review the findings listed in the applicable section of the UDO. Following deliberation, the commission chair will ask for a motion, which will take the form of a recommendation to the planning director for action on the request. The motion can be a recommendation for approval with conditions, or denial. The commission may also vote to defer the case to a later meeting. Typically, this is in order to receive additional information. The commission will then vote on the request. I just want to remind everyone that if you do turn your camera off, you want to speak, you'll have to identify yourself by name. So I'm going to turn it back over to Corey to conduct the administrative alternate reviews.
Thanks, Carter. We will go ahead and call the cases in the order in which they appear on today's agenda. First up is case AAD 1-21. This is 7505 Fox Road. We have the applicant, Cleve Pate. We have Robert Shunk, Mike Herpinski as the applicants, and we also have two neighbors, Donna Wilson and Jay Dick, who signed up to speak. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Carter to go ahead and give us a staff presentation.
Thank you. As Corey mentioned, 7505 Fox Road. This is a transparency request. The intent of the transparency requirements is to lend visual interest to street-facing building facades for both pedestrians and building occupants, and to minimize blank wall areas. It's not applicable to residential uses. In terms of the findings, number one, the approved alternate must meet the intent of the transparency requirements. Number two, the approved alternate conforms with that comprehensive plan and any adopted city plans. And number three, the street-facing building facade utilizes other architectural treatments to create visual interest and to offset reduction in transparency. In terms of the staff report, this is a 4.68 acre site that's currently vacant, proposed general building type for a storage facility, property zone CX3, and the request is for transparency standards. Since it is a general building type in a CX district, the applicant is required to meet a 33% transparency on the street-facing street-level facade. Upper stories will require a minimum 20% transparency. The street-facing facades are Fox Road to the south and Carlton Drive to the west. The applicant requests an alternate for the ground floor, currently proposed is 18%. In addition, Carlton Drive for both the ground level and upper floors, which currently have a little over 4% and 5% respectively. And in lieu of providing the minimum transparency on these facades, The applicant proposes various architectural treatments to provide visual interest, which I'll go over in just a minute. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, the commission have any questions for staff? Okay, being none, I will go ahead and open it up to the applicant. Mr. Pate, if you'd like to go ahead and present.
Hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to just speak generally to the building, talk about a few things and what we tried to achieve. And I think if once I go through a few things there, it will give people maybe a little more insight and be able to ask some questions if they wish. The building is S1, which is a storage occupancy. It's about 150 by 240 feet. The building is relatively low for a 3-story building, only 10 feet floor to floor. Of course, we do have roof slope, but the roof is covered by parapet, which would cover all equipment. Makes the building a little bit taller, but at a maximum of 37 feet high from finished floor, and generally about 36 feet from finished floor around the building. We've had some experience in doing these type things before, this type of building. So what we try to do, and I think we've done on this building fairly well, is to create some architectural interest. We've got a variety of materials. They're usually fairly premium materials around the whole building. We use a block, the architectural block, brick, using EFS, aluminum storefront, glass. We use a metal panel, which is an architectural panel, a horizontal panel on it. And we've tried to use some variety in color shades, fairly subtle, except for the red contrast, which is the company basically logo color on that. So as you go around the building, there is a change in materials quite often, all less than 30 feet on the Fox Road and the Carlton Road side. In the one thing is, I'll let also Robert Shunk speak to it in shortly. Is that the building? We have a 50-foot natural vegetation line on the front of the building, which really covers most of the first floor and part of the second floor on the Fox Road side. We have heavy landscaping on the Carlton Road side as well. But again, I'm going to let Robert speak to that shortly, but I just want to talk to a few other issues on the building. The building is quite low impact as a storage building. Very little traffic, not a lot of activity all the time. Sometimes you can have storage units that aren't accessed for months in a building. So there is quite low impact in terms of activity in the neighborhood. One of the reasons we were asking to reduce transparency is obviously the building, the majority of the interior of the building is storage units. We do have there's a nice office and toilets in the building for patrons and employees, but the building is basically storage units. And obviously in a building like this, you try to get as much square footage of use as possible. So we do have storage units. When you view the plan, you'll see that storage units are on outside walls, except for the front two corners where the office is and where we do a kind of a tower feature on each end, which is pretty subtle, but it does have glass. You can see into the building somewhat. The building is primarily grays, dark grays. We have of course, the red on it. We have used these colors before. They were quite well accepted. We have a building on Highway 55 that was reviewed by Wake County. And it was that building has been very well accepted in appearance. So I would say just generally, let me leave it at that, and I'd be glad to take any questions anybody may have in regards to the building.
Any questions from the commission for the applicant? Cleve, I guess one question I have is looking back at your floor plan. So the requirement for glass is not only that you have a percentage of glass, but that it is 8 feet into the space. And so looking at the corner, it looks like the office area, of course, would meet that. The upper corner does not. Is that
That's correct.
correct? Okay.
Yes, that the upper corner, which is the Fox Road, Carlton Road corner, that really, what that's set up is really kind of a feature corner.
Gotcha.
Where you will look in, you would see like a faux storage unit in there. And it's about, usually we have about 3 to 4 feet of walkway in there. That's really not a usable walkway. It's just to give some a little depth into the building with the glass, but we don't have 8 feet there.
Okay. And can you give us just a little more context of the surroundings? So just looking back at the site plan again, just so the commission is clear. So Fox Road is, of course, going kind of left and right, up and down, kind of there.
Yes.
In the dark gray. And then it's kind of hard to see. Yeah, it's just kind of hard to see the other road there.
Yes. Carlton Road obviously is, for all intents and purposes, perpendicular to Fox and is running along, as you're looking at that plan, the left side of the long view of the building. Across the street is residential on both areas, on Fox and Carlton. The rest of the lot right now is completely wooded lot and in the other direction as well. So basically the residential is on the Fox and Carlton Road sides, which would be facing the building from across the street.
Okay, and then you mentioned,
both streets.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned some heavy buffering and stuff along Fox Road, and just wondering if you have any kind of landscape plan, or if it's just what is required kind of by the city.
Yes, we do have a landscape plan. There is heavy buffering on Carlton Road. There's also buffering on Fox Road in terms of landscaping, but we also have a 50-foot primary tree presentation area. So if you were to ride by that site, you would see a wooded site, and rather than some thinning, you would see that existing vegetation that is, for all intents and purposes, to remain. But could I ask that Robert Shunk maybe speak to the landscaping on this, if he could?
That would be great.
This is Robert. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so to follow up Cleve's points, we're set back anywhere from 90 to 120 feet from the proposed Fox Road curb and gutter. And in the middle of that, you do see a 50-foot wide TCA area that includes a mix of pines and hardwoods. So I would say it's anywhere from 20 to 50 feet tall, where it would pretty well screen the building. Along Carlton, we have there's an existing power line, so so under that power line currently there is no vegetation for about 15 feet on either side. We're proposing a double row of street trees along within the street tree. We're proposing a understory canopy tree of Cercis canadensis, a redbud tree, and then on the between the power line and the building, a vestigiate, columnar tree of a ginkgo. So the idea is to provide, some of the accents along those buildings to provide some semi-opaqueness, and along the foundation of the building, a variety of evergreen shrubs. The building is, along Carlton, we're about 40 feet set back from the back of curb, and we only have about 23 feet between the power line and the
building itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would add one thing on that too, Robert. That was really informative there. But on some of those larger trees, those trees when they're put in, those are pretty large trees right off the bat.
For the trees that we're putting in along Carlton,
Yes.
so the ginkgos are narrow trees, columnar to to not interfere with the power lines and the lovely tree hacking our Duke Power Company does. But they'll be probably 12 to 14 feet tall when they go in, and they're to remain narrow. And the red buds, may be 8 to 10, but maybe more like 8 feet tall when they go in. But the idea is to have the trees all set from one another to kind of provide an overlapping, screening, semi-opaque screening of the building.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Hey, Corey, it's Jamie. I was curious if the applicant has any additional information with regards to the materials they'll be using. I know we're talking grays and reds, but I'd like to see more, being that we're using the change in character on the building as the reason for allowing their request.
Yes. Along the base of the building, if you look at the elevations, we do a change of an architectural split face and brick along the lower area of the building. You're looking at the Fox Road elevation, and in the center we're doing a brick. This all brick panels. Those 8 panels are brick with brick detailing around the perimeter and the top, and they're separated by a contrasting inset brick band. The red panels are the architectural panels, horizontal, ribbed, and you can see we do try to get some contrast, but we didn't want a big difference in color on the architectural block, which is a darker gray, and the brick, which will end up being a medium gray. And then everything up high is an ephes on the building with basically V grooves. And you see we've tried to accent around the different elements with slightly different color. We have 2 colors of ephes in order to get some banding on the building. I would say the same thing if you look at the Carlton Road side. If you could pull that up, maybe there you go. You can see we do the corner, which is the glass corner. The glass corner is showing on the Carlton and Fox Road intersection corner. As you move left, looking at this, that is a brick panel, has 2 horizontal contrasting brick lines, which are inset. They match up with the front panels we were talking about. Then you go to an alternating of ephes and the horizontal red panel. Then we get to 2 tower elements, brick bases, kind of a colonnade, goes all the way up with an ephes cap, like a classic cap. And in between those 2 tower elements, which have an ephes interior, which you can see that, which has a horizontal band, a contrasting band. And at the lower level, we break that horizontal up by going from brick to architectural block. And those will be outset, so there'll be a distinct shadow line there on all these elements. So we're not, even though we're changing materials, we're also stepping those materials out in order to get some relief on the building.
What is the jump with the bringing those out? What kind of distance we working with?
Well, on the center lines below the red, we'll probably stay with like a 4-inch outset of the brick panel, and the larger elements, the 2 elements there, we probably would not want to come much further out than 8 inches on those if we could, if that was acceptable. It is a possibility. We'd like to go 4 on those, but we probably could go 8. But we don't want to get too much of a foundation jump out on those because they're pretty tall. There's quite a bit of brick there.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission for the applicant? Any other questions for staff from the commission? Okay, being none, it looks like we have 2 other participants, I believe neighbors. We have Donna Wilson and Jay Dick. Who would like to kick this off? Donna, would you like to go ahead and speak?
Yes, Donna had, somebody tapped on our door here, and it was one of the other neighbors, I think. And maybe they were trying to get onto the meeting also. But anyway, Donna Wilson has lived at 6909 Carlton Drive since 1973, I believe. So she's probably one of the, she's been in this house for a long time, seen that vacant lot over there across the road. And I guess we're pretty satisfied, I think, hearing what's going to be done over there. We like what you're saying there. And as far as the windows go, the windows, it seems, are going to be in the corner, I believe you said, down there at the corner of Fox Road and Carlton. I thought maybe it was going to be a stairway or something there. But anyway, the windows were, I guess, just an architectural feature. It's going to be in the corner, like you were describing. And that's not a problem with us because we were a little bit afraid of people looking out windows down at us over here. But that's not going to be the case because we're about in the middle of we're the third house from the corner of Fox Road. So anyway,
And this is Jay.
Okay.
This is Jay speaking, correct?
That's right.
Can you go ahead and just state your name?
We're on
Jay.
here live.
Jay, can you go ahead and just state your name and address, just so we have it?
Go over there.
We just found out they've got you guys on TV next door over here.
Okay.
But anyway, I got Donna here now, and I just told him that you've been here since 1973, I believe it is, 6909. And we had a few questions. I don't know if this is the time to ask them. We were concerned about the hours of operation of the business, and let's see, what did I write down here? The buffer zone, I think you pretty well explained about the buffer. And it sounds like it's even wider than I thought it was going to be. I believe you said, you say 40 feet or something like that from the edge of the pavement to the building, and it's 23 feet beyond the power line. I was hearing some numbers like that.
Yes, we can ask the applicant to go back over that.
Yeah,
it varies.
Anyway, that sounds pretty, I guess you're going to leave pretty much what's there now. Well, Donna said, well, I hope you're going to clean it up a little bit because there's a lot of junk and trash and stuff over there now, you know.
Every day when I go out in the morning and get my newspaper and I take the plastic bag, or if it gets a lot, I see a lot of trash. People go down Carlton Drive, throw the trash out, and especially on that property. And so I get it up. So people that come in this neighborhood that will look halfway decent, you know, and I at least try to get it on either side of my neighbors. Well, I try to do that whole block, but sometimes I don't have time to. But anyway, at least in front of my house and two of my neighbors on each side of me. And there's a lot of trash be thrown out there. And I want y'all to be aware of that because I have complained about it. And so, well, I don't know what's going to happen after the building be put up. Hopefully, the people will stop throwing the trash out. You know, or they might throw it on my side in my yard. I don't know.
Let's hope not.
But there is a problem there. And my neighbor next door, Dorothy and Joe McLean, and they're aware of it, so is Doug. But Doug works, Doug Water. And so I'm trying to look after at least my neighbors right around here, so it looks pretty good, you know, when we look out the window or go out the front door or in the yard. So anyway, I just wanted y'all to know that. So you'll be aware of it. But if I can still get out there and get the trash up, I reckon I'm a trash lady.
All right. Well, we appreciate you doing that, Donna. Well, we appreciate you and Jay both speaking on behalf of this project. We don't get people coming enough to speak to these, so we appreciate you all taking the time to come and speak.
I believe the applicant said that there was also a building just like this one on Highway 55. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
And I wouldn't mind being able to drive by and to see what it looked like. That way we won't have to wait around for 6 months to see what it's going to look like.
Okay.
Maybe we can get the address of that.
We will ask him for the address.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Great. Thank you. Any questions from the commission for the neighbors? Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming and speaking tonight.
Mr. Chair.
I'm real concerned. Excuse me.
Yeah, we were a little bit concerned about the operating hours, but I'm not sure how that works. I know it's not going to be many people at a time over there. And then probably access it with their phones or something. I don't know how they get through the gate. It might be at all hours. I don't know. But.
Well, maybe we can ask.
And also, I was wondering about the windows, which I see you be on the corner, so people can't look over on our property and know our living habits and everything. Now, my house was broken into in I believe it's 2013, and they ransacked the whole inside of my house. And ever since that happened, now I got a security system in the house, and I've been here for that long, and just luckily, my dog and I was out of town, and the day that they did go in the house was the day we came home. It was on a Sunday, but and that's why I like to have my privacy. I always have everything closed up, my garage door and the windows, so people can't tell when I'm home, when I'm not home, and I'm out of town a lot, and I'm divorced, and Jay's my boyfriend now, but it's a lot of times I have been in this house by myself, and I'm hard of hearing, and I just want to feel protected here.
Okay.
And so I was concerned about that too, So I don't know.
Great.
That's it.
That's good.
Okay. Thank you very much, Donna and Jay. We will ask those questions and get a response. Carter, did you have something before we open it back up to?
Yeah, I was going to say if the applicant wanted to answer those questions. We also received some inquiries from someone who couldn't attend the meeting, and we can kind of talk about that. I think some of the issues are beyond the purview of this request, but I'm going to let Lee speak to that.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Carter. I'm going to limit it just to what was germane to this conversation, but similar to some of the concerns that Donna and Jay mentioned, this neighbor was concerned with the level of screening and buffering that would be present between the facade on the Carlton Drive road and the residential area where she lives. She was mostly concerned about light coming in, but I think a portion of it was aesthetically, if there would be any sort of landscaping buffer there.
Thank you, Lee, for that. It's kind of opposite of what we would normally think, right? Is you kind of want more windows. They're kind of asking for less for the privacy and stuff. So that's interesting. I'm glad they came forward and gave us some feedback. Can we open it back up to Cleve? Could you speak to a couple things? One is the hours, if you may or may not be able to do that, and also just go over one more time with the buffers, just so the neighbors understand that a little bit better.
Yes, I'd be glad to. And I'll speak to one thing that Donna mentioned, I believe, in terms of security and people looking out. The corner elements with the glass, those there will be nobody looking out those because those areas are actually locked off. So it's not a public area. So from the second, third levels, there would be nobody looking out of that window. Actually, the only place that anybody would be able to even see out of the building glass-wise is from the office, which is on the first level on the opposite corner. So that would not be an issue. In terms of, she also mentioned too, just to throw this out, I know she's concerned about trash and stuff like that. But one thing, this property will be highly maintained. So if anybody does throw any trash out, it won't be there very long. In terms of buffers, as Robert was speaking about, there's very heavy buffering on both roads, on Fox and Carlton. We do have basically the 50-foot primary buffer on the Fox Road side with almost another 50 feet to the building, maybe even more in some cases, of landscaping. And that's just on the Fox Road side. On the Carlton Road side, yes, there's the 40 plus feet distance from the curb to the building. And there's actually three layers of landscaping there, where you have 2 layers of street trees that are staggered. And then you have, as he mentioned, another basically layer of evergreen landscaping. So there's on both street sides, the building is heavily landscaped and will be a maintained landscape. So I think that is something that people will be pleased about that live in the area.
Great, thank you for that. Any other questions quickly from the commission for the applicant or staff? Being done, I'm going to go ahead and close it and bring it to the table for discussion. Anybody like to start this one out? I believe, it is a long way to go from, the percentage of glass that they have to what is required by code. I think they've done a lot to the elevations to create some different materials and some color variation to try to make up for that. Would love to hear other people's thoughts on that, but I think they have. I think for the use that is there, and I think hearing from the neighbors was good, because it was something that I wasn't necessarily expecting. But I think having giving them a little bit more privacy with not having glass is actually kind of a good thing for them. So for at least for the ones who spoke tonight.
Yeah, Corey, I would agree with everything that you just said, especially with regard to the architectural detailing, the change of materials and things like that to break down the facade. But then also the buffering with the landscape, particularly on Fox Road, but also on Carlton Road. Fox seems like a really deep buffer with a lot of old growth trees in the tree save area. And then along Carlton, having 50 feet between the pavement and the building with a couple rows of plantings. Seems like it does a good job of buffering itself from the road. So I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any other feedback? Unusually quiet tonight.
Yeah, I'll echo. I think there was a lot of effort taken with the landscape to make an evergreen buffer, and I appreciate that, and some of the bigger trees going in. Well, I did see one, I think it was a ligustrum on the planting plan on the invasives list for North Carolina. So we probably want to swap that out with something else, but other than that, it looks good.
All right, should we go ahead and go through the findings, take a look at the findings? So we have three findings to review. One, the approved alternate meets the intent of the transparency requirements. The approved alternate conforms with the comprehensive plans, adopted city plans, and the street-facing building facade utilizes other architectural treatments to create a visual interest to offset the reduction in transparency, which is, I think, what we were just talking about. So number two, the approved alternate conforms with the comprehensive plans, adopted city plans. If we could take a look and see if we can substantiate that with a few findings, policies.
I think policy UD 1.2, architectural features.
Bear with me, I'm trying to get to my screen here.
I think maybe UD 1.3, creating attractive facades too.
Yeah.
7.4, scale and design of new commercial uses.
Okay. All right, so that's three of them. Do we have a motion?
Corey, Chair, this is, I just wanted to check, does Martha want to make that a condition of swapping out that plant species? Is that something that you'd like to do?
Yeah, if we could do that, that'd be great. It was the ligustrum. If we could just say use something that's not on the North Carolina invasive plants list.
Let's see if we can find a motion and then we'll add that.
Motion to approve with condition.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a first from Jamie and a second from Chris. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, I'll ask to raise your hand, or if your screen's not on, to go ahead and say aye. Let me get to my, so I can't see everybody.
This is Jake. I'll vote to support
Okay.
the motion.
Okay, thank you, Jake. There we go. Now I can see everybody. Okay, any opposed? Okay, so that passes. Thank you all. Okay, let's go right into case number AAD. Case number 2, AAD 2-21. It's 618 Cumberland Street. We have the applicant, Chris Hodges, and we'll go ahead and just turn it over to Carter for staff presentation.
Thank you. Yes, 618 Cumberland Street. The request is for transparency. I'm not going to go through the intent and findings because we just went through them. But in terms of the staff report, the applicant is proposing an accessory storage building on his site that currently has a commercial building on it. The zoning is CX3 at the northwest corner of Cumberland Road and Tipton Street. The proposed building is categorized as a general building type. Again, 33% transparency on street-facing street-level facades. The applicant plans to use actually a shipping container for this building for storage, but no transparency is proposed on either street-facing facade. And just to let you know, we did check with our development services folks, and even if it is an accessory building used for storage, it would need to meet the requirements of the code. Actually, the placement of this accessory building is in front of the main building on both streets, so that's another thing to consider. So the applicant will go into his presentation and talk about the details, but he is providing or proposing, I think, green screens as kind of an architectural element to provide the visual interest. So I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to the applicant.
All right, any questions for the staff? All right, being none, we will go ahead and turn over to Chris. Mr. Hodges.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. So, yeah, so going through the process, I'm still not entirely clear from from zoning downtown why it's considered a building. I think because I'm putting a deck on top of it, because I look out my window right now and the stuff across the street, he has about 80 containers with no glass in the side. So I'm still a little confused, but I'm happy to be here. And you know, we moved into this building about 2 years ago into downtown. We are a development and construction company, and so we moved downtown because we do a lot of projects downtown and want to be a part of this community. So doing something to add visual appeal to this, we are completely happy to do, and we're planning on doing it. So this just basically forces us before we get a finalized permit. So you can see it sits here currently, as you can see from the pictures, on the Cumberland side. I believe it looks very close to a C2 protective yard on the Cumberland side when they built this building in 2011, before we were here. So you can see the red rectangle here. That's the approximate location of the building, of the shipping container. There wasn't many places without putting it in the actual parking lot, which I needed the parking for, besides right there, moving it slightly back. So that's kind of where we have it situated currently. And you can go to the next quarter there. So this is kind of the proposal with working with Preston Montague, who I know Martha knows, actually connected us, kind of a way to bring more visual appeal. So along both sides, I know it's kind of small, and I think Carter sent out maybe a bigger version of the actual plans, but so here you go. So, you know, on the facing Tipton side, which is the top right corner, kind of 4 different panels there of welded wire mesh, as to have the vines that we're going to plant, the floral vines, native species to North Carolina, grow up, and then another one there, the bottom left-hand corner, which would be facing east and facing the Cumberland Street side. So we'll go back to that other slide, and so you can see kind of just a sketch here on the left side there. So adding visual appeal, the chosen plants attract pollinators, hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies. So not only adding color and green, but also, you know, having that be beneficial to the wildlife of the community. So kind of the plants that we chose on the next slide there, both native to the south and to North Carolina, drought tolerant, like lots of sun. They grow fairly large, so 15 to 20 feet high. Now, obviously, they wouldn't get that high because they would stop at the top there, which is approximately 8 to 9 feet, and then grow 3 to 5 feet wide. So it's a 20-foot shipping container, and so, you know, it would really, 4 of those panels along that side would really cover the majority of that in a fairly short period of time. We are proposing to paint it the same dark gray color of our building as well. And on top, if you saw from the plans, actually put a deck where we'll have company meetings, be able to have some picnic tables, some different plantings, potted plants and stuff up there where some of our folks could either have meetings, eat their lunch, do some work up there, just to be outside, you know, on this property. So that's basically it. And so if anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for the applicant from the commission?
This is Chris. Yeah, I've just got one. Do you own that shipping container?
I do. I own the shipping container, and I own the office building and the lot. So I'm the owner of all 3.
Okay, thanks.
And Chris, you're saying that this is it's a storage building, really, is what the use
Yes.
is?
So yeah, I use it for my construction materials and power washers and things. So to put glass in the side of it would really defeat the purpose of being able to lock up expensive building materials. And it's only, 7.5 feet wide on the inside. So I don't get that 8 feet and putting a bunch of glass in when I'm trying to keep it secure is not really what I was intending for it.
Yeah, kind of hard to get the 8-foot depth with a 7-foot deep building.
And a bunch of junk in it, as you could see when I opened it up and took that picture on the one slide there. You could see the interior. Yeah, right there on the right there. So.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Hey, Corey, it's Jamie, and this may be a question for staff, and if I missed it, I apologize. What prompted this to come before us today?
It was zoning kicked it out, saying that they were considering this an office building because I think I was building a structure on top of it, or maybe because of where exactly it was located on the lot. And so they said my only way around it was to either put 50% glass. I thought it was 50, maybe it's 33% glass in the bottom story that's facing the road, or to come before this commission. Those are my two options.
Thank you. Carter, do you have any insight to this?
Yes, he's correct. And speaking to the reviewer, I confirmed. Like, you sure? But yeah, I think the location and the putting the use above it kicked it into this as a requirement.
Okay.
They don't have the UDO did not speak directly to this, so I think it was some interpretation, and we're all figuring it out together.
Yeah.
I think once you start building a structure, it becomes a permanent object, unlike the ones across the street that are kind of more temporary in nature. But that being said, yeah, any other questions? It doesn't appear, any other questions for staff, I guess, before we move on? Being none, it doesn't look like there's any members. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Corey, I've got one for staff. Is there anything related to the deck that we should be considering today?
I don't believe so. I want to say that's a building code question, but not in terms of requirement. That comes under administrative alternate.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing that jumped out at me is being a little odd, but I don't think that's in our purview for tonight. Thank you.
All right. That being said, I don't see any.
It's creative. It's not odd. We're going for creative.
I'm going to go ahead and close this and bring it back to the commission for discussion. I mean, to me, it looks like they've gone, above and beyond. I mean, I think, it's a small building. It's hard to, obviously they can't create openings or give them the percentage that the UDO is asking for. And they gave it a good shot at doing some really nice plantings, creating a nice feature here, minimal impact. Any other thoughts, comments?
I appreciate the aesthetic effort made and also creating an amenity area, I think, out of a storage unit. So I think that's all good.
Yeah, I'll echo that, and I'd like to thank Chris for showing really clear graphics. It's really easy to understand what they're proposing, and I definitely appreciate the native plantings as well.
So one comment that I've got, maybe this is a question back to the applicant. The outside of the container right now is pretty beat up, and even though we're putting these screens in front of it and plantings that'll eventually grow, I think it'd be nice to see that container painted now, so that it kind of blends in a little better than it does. And there's like some, I think, signs on the outside for whatever shipping container company it was, or the phone number. Like, it would be nice to see that go away.
Chris, I agree, and the idea of not to prescribe, but something that was going to blend with the plantings. You know, maybe make it disappear, camouflage style. That kind, not necessarily camouflage. let's not get that twisted. But yeah, a green or something that was more muted for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even mind the color that it is now, just as long as it was, you know, refinished.
Hey, this is Jake. I think this project looks fine. I think just bigger question for us is if we anticipate, you know, more creative shipping container based projects, kind of to Jamie's point, understanding, you know, what are the different uses that might be used, how can we anticipate making the process easier for folks and more clear, because I know, you know, this has been a trend around the world, really, recent years, and I'm not sure how much the UDO speaks directly to this, but it might be something for us to look into in the future if we foresee, you know, this, you know, even uses beyond storage, obviously, you know, people doing retail and restaurants and things like that. So I don't know enough about the specifics of the current you know, UDO and how things are written, if there is language that speaks directly to these uses, but you know, just wanted to flag that in case it's something we want to spend a little time looking into, if we think it would be worthwhile to make things easier for folks and just, you know, streamline you know, creative uses of these things. So any thoughts on that? Appreciated.
Thanks, Jake. I agree with that. I think, you know, this is something that's been kind of around for a while. It's been popular for a while, and they're still coming up time and again. And I think, you know, more so when we start looking at these, you know, more urban kind of secondary homes and things that, you know, we should start taking a look at that. But they are starting to get into commercial uses as well. Like this. So I think it is worth kind of discussion. Any other questions from commission? Being none, I think we should just go ahead and look through the findings. Same findings we just went through. The approved alternate meets the intent of the transparency requirements. I believe we does. Number 3, the street-facing building facade utilizes other architectural treatments to create a visual interest and offset the reduction of transparency, which we were just discussing, and it does. The approved alternate conforms with the comprehensive plan and adopted city plans. If we can review the findings, throw out a few policies.
LU 2.1 placemaking.
To echo the applicant, UD 1.3, creative attractive facades.
UD 4.5.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve. This is Jake. It's been a while since I've done one. So.
Thank you, Jake.
Excuse me, quick, Chair, do we want to condition this with the paint job?
I think we should. I'm not, you know, I don't have any strong feelings about the color if it's makes it go away or if it actually comes out. And
I was looking at all the bigger pictures we had. I mean, it'd be nice too, like you said, we can't prescribe, but the color of the main building, which is almost the same color as the shipping container, would make sense too.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, Jake, would you be open to a condition of providing a new paint job for the container prior to installation of the?
Yeah, I thought that was already part of the presentation or the proposal. So if it's not explicitly required, we can go ahead and make that a condition, but
Okay.
I thought the applicant already mentioned it.
Okay, Lee.
The applicant has requested to be unmuted to make a comment about the paint condition.
Yes. Yeah, can we go ahead and open it back up to Chris Hodges?
Yeah, so if you pull up that last picture, Carter, I think is maybe running it. I can speak to that briefly.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's Carter. Here we go.
So you can see a little bit on that left side above that Jeep. It's kind of a dark gray color. Our proposal, not explicitly written, so I'm happy to have it as a part of conditional, was to paint it that kind of dark gray color before we actually welded those panels on, just so it was consistent with the existing aesthetic of the building as I bring clients and everything here. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's bring it back to the commission. How does that sound? Jake, that sound?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just make a new motion or amend the previous one to include the paint condition.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I think Chris had his hand up. Maybe second? Okay. All right, all in favor? You can raise your hand. If you're not visible, please state
Aye.
if you're aye. Okay. Jake?
Aye for me as well. Thanks.
All right, any opposed? All right, we are unanimously approved. Thank you for that, Chris. Appreciate you coming before us. All right, I believe that ends our business portion of the meeting. We will continue with our working group reports and other business. All right, so working group. I guess, Lee, would you like to kick us off with the Sir Walter Raleigh Awards?
Yes, I would. Thank you,
All right.
Chair. So from all accounts, the watch party was a great success. I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend that myself, but I'm very grateful to Carter and Katie Dombrowski for making that all happen. After that viewing, we had a couple of errors that needed to be fixed before the video can be made final. So our communications department is working on making those changes for us. And as soon as it's ready, I will let you all know, and we'll make it widely available. But stay tuned, it should be very, very soon. And then we'll get started talking about the 2021 awards here pretty quickly.
Right around the corner.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we appreciate all your hard work on that. It was a lot of work, I know, and we appreciate you putting all that together.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate all of you being so creative and flexible this year and making this event really great.
Everybody did a great job. I thought it was very well done. So thank you all for that. Okay. I think that's pretty much our working group reports for the moment. Let's we have other business, the Parks and Neighborhood Dick's Edge study. Lee, would you like to go ahead and introduce that as well?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a presentation from Douglas Johnston, who would like to tell you a little bit about his ideas for the Dick's Edge area study and how he thinks the Appearance Commission could help benefit and strengthen that study. So now I will turn it over to Doug. Moderator, if you could unmute him.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for letting me take your time. This is an idea that I've been trying to develop since the Master Plan Executive Committee began its work over 2 years ago with the introduction of the idea of developing Dick's Park. Let me have the next slide, please. This shows the park and the various edges, principally three. The edge with Carolee on in a sort of southeasterly direction along Lake Wheeler Road. The edge along the Western Boulevard, which was the subject of the 81.1, I get my numbers wrong, but you may recall that charrette that was done to describe how that property might come into play. And then the area of
Dix Park, well, topographically speaking, the area of Dix Park, technically and administratively part of Centennial Campus, otherwise known as Spring Hill, with a little section at the south under the jurisdiction of the Department of Agriculture and the farmers market. That's where my first interest began, and I'll show a picture of that later. But we've started with the edge study for for the Lake Wheeler roadside. So I began to get interested in that, and it's a hugely interesting, probably as complex of one as you'll ever see. It has downtown South within it. It has the another development at Lake Wheeler Road and South Saunders Street at the north corner, at the most easterly point of Dix Park, at where that little triangle sort of points out there. And it has some real interesting problems of equity, but it also has some terrific potential to demonstrate how in an urban area, a group like the Appearance Commission, with the assistance of planning and development for overlay districts and the park and greenway system, there's several parks in that area, how they all come together to make something greater than the sum of the parts. Next slide, please. So what's the contribution for the Appearance Commission in the area study? And if you haven't read what the city's webpage says about an area study, it's a good place to begin with, and we'll touch on that lightly in a minute. Next slide, please. Why is it important? Well, I'm a real fan of Frederick Olmsted, and I don't have any new ideas about appearance or aesthetics. I just farm out the old ones. I was formerly a public finance attorney, and so those are the people that find out what somebody wants and studies it and then tries to convince somebody else to give it to them or keep them from getting it, whatever the case may be. But the point he makes there is this park, which is going to be wonderful, will not be finished until we deal with the edges in the most profound ways equal to what we expect to do with the park. Next slide, please. Again, just another way of saying what I just said. And that's a central motif of practically everything I say. Next slide. Here's another picture of the park, and you see the little areas numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. Part 2, which is separated by from the rest by a railroad track, is one that gives lots of room for having something more than a pastoral picturesque landscape in the park, although that's where I'm always headed. I think that's what will make Dix Park speak rather than something that's possibly a little bit too cluttered. But I'm not criticizing the thing that's going on because I'm fairly well convinced MVVA, Michael Van Valkenburg, and Matt Urbanski and the others that work there will make it magical. What I'm interested in, at least from a semi-landscape point of view, is what I've learned from Kofi Boone in the course that I took from him last semester on social cultural landscapes, and from Fernando Magallanes on how we got to where we are in our thinking about what constitutes a landscape, and in particular a park. Next slide, please. So there's one of my new heroes, Michael Van Valkenburg. Park succeeds at varying distances, and that means it probably reaches at least to Wilmington Street, and probably, because of the characteristic of our park system, all the way to the the park at Chavis Park. So there's a lot of room in there, and all of that part needs to be somehow amplifying, and I'm almost growing to hate that word because everything is amplified these days. We're gonna amplify this and amplify that. So I'll just say enhance. Next slide, please. So when we look at a park in that sense, it's the main park, the immediate frontage, that's sometimes, of course, called the active and complex edge, which a lot of landscape attention goes into that so that it's either a contrasting or a complementing edge to the park and the experience people have when they go to the park. They don't just go to the park, they go to the immediate frontages. And then beyond that is what we've been talking about, the zone, what I call park actuated growth and development, tempered by respect for equitable issues. Next slide, please. This is Dix Park, except it's not. More than half of what you see there is Centennial Campus. And that's going to be amazingly different than it is today, unless some attention is given that, as I'm suggesting might be given to the opposite side of the park on Lake Wheeler Road. But that is the park. That's part one of a park. Next slide, please. Here are two other edges, active and complex edges. This is not Central Park West. That's 59th Street in New York City on the south side of Central Park. And that's a phenomenal edge and a very powerful one, and one I'm very keen to anticipate, but I don't think Lake Wheeler Road is going to be that yet. Now, on the other picture is of the Royal Crescent at Bath. And could we go back to that other one just for a second? The first, if you don't mind, reverse the slides just for a second. I picture something like that done by NC State so that the only places the park border is actually touched is at either end of the crescent. Now, the crescent is a concept. I think it can be much more complex and modernize that. Now, if you'll go to the next slide, please. In the Royal Crescent, it's 1,000 feet from either end of the Royal Crescent, but the frontage of people looking at that wonderful park, actually the green belt around Bath, is a factor of pi r squared. So it's really closer to 1,400. And my math is terrible. It might be 1,544 or it's 1,455, but it's more than 1,000 feet of actual frontage for everybody who happens to enjoy the privilege of living or working at that edge of the park. And yet it pushes the park, it pushes the buildings away from the park in a way that I think could produce interesting effects. Next slide, please. And this shows the area of park actuated growth. And if you look at the old maps of Central Park, there was very little except farmland, where now you see everything along Fifth Avenue on the right-hand side of that photo and Central Park West on the left-hand side. That's 2.5 miles long. Unlike Dix Park, along that 2.5 miles are over 100 entry points to the park from the zone of park actuated growth and development. The streets going north from 59th to 60th Street to 110th Street are 260 to 280 feet, one from one to the other. So there's lots of ways to get connectivity to the Central Park that at the moment Dix Park doesn't enjoy. Dix Park has that's a perimeter of about 40 or 30,000 feet, and Dix Park's perimeter is closer to 20,000, but it only has 14 connected points at the moment to the rest of the city and the park the park actuated zone beyond. Next slide, please. So when everything works together, it's finished. And we started by saying the park isn't complete in itself. It has to be part of what's around it. So here's the language of the area plan. I'll let you have a quick look at that, but I think it gives ample room for the Appearance Commission to have a role, and I'm interested in seeing how that might be developed. Next slide. These things sound like the work of an Appearance Commission to me, although its scope will and direction will be a little different. Next slide, please. Because we're talking about a little bit of an extension of the purpose of the Appearance Commission's work to be a reinforcement of the urban park pattern of greenways, for example, improving a street environment for raising the consciousness of the park to come, sort of an invitation. Those areas beyond the edges at Lake Wheeler Road will be areas that can serve best by exciting people that they're near the park, announcing its presence, sort of preparing them for the park nearby, maybe with only hints of the park to come, accenting nature, but also having an aesthetic that suggests immediacy. I don't think they would quite mimic the park, the areas there, but it would be us. I'd like to play with that word with some of you people that are designers and see what you thought about that as a design and aesthetic function. Part of that zone that we're talking about and what goes on there is a question too of getting to the park. And so there'd be wayfinding messages, not literal signs, but in art and design. And I'm going to be taking a course with Chuck Flink in a week, and he promises me I'll learn everything I need to know about that in order to talk reasonably intelligently. But for the moment, I'm leaving that as well as placemaking, which would be part of getting there. It's really a question of encouraging and tempting people with the sense that the park is fast to loom in front of them, sort of like that last slice of pizza that's in the refrigerator and you can't keep away from it. A reminder of the park's desirability and how easy it is to get to, as well as perhaps a signal for an impromptu foray to the park. Generally, arranging communication between the park and the edge area. The mechanisms, transparency requirements, but directional in terms of transparency. Strategic voids, facade lines with elevations and features that are more or less really a view shed towards the park. Buffers, not to keep you from having to see something, but by focusing your attention. Features that engage near and distant context. Scales, the usual tree preservation, street furniture, amenities, things that reinforce the sense that a park is on the way. And I'm not sure all of them have been discovered yet, but that's why people enjoy being interested in design. To make it a little more concrete, I think of the roundabouts. If you can imagine a roundabout The one I have in mind is at Morgan Street in Hillsborough. And from each end of the roundabout on Hillsborough are little tendrils, really medians, street medians. And they have, Aaron, I hope you'd come up with a good choice there, plantings that are the slightest hint of, because they can't obstruct any view, of grasses and things that look special. That's as far as I'm capable of going on a concrete example, even what I'm talking about. But next slide, please, because we're about to wrap it up. That didn't time very well. That was supposed to come earlier when I was talking about getting there, but that's the point. And you can read some of his thoughts on the subject, and you'll come up with some inspiration, I'm sure. Next slide, please. Now, I'm not sure you're going to have any curtains in the area along Lake Wheeler Road or beyond, but the idea is that people will begin to have a sense that they're in the park, that they're close enough to it that it can be reached in a stroll. Next slide, please. The models, Oberlin Road, Carter will be familiar with this, and I'll be interested in his reactions. The campus pathway and Hillsborough Street itself. Next slide, please. You can see some of the things here are features that would promote awareness of the park. Next slide, please. This is a pathway from Gorman Street to Pullen Road through the NCSU campus. That's, I shouldn't think, beyond the imagination for the routes through Fuller Heights and Carolee. I don't imagine that would be on Maywood, but on some of the lesser streets and ways, that could be a significant part of it. This pathway goes all the way over just before the bell tower. It has it takes you through the Court of Carolina, to which I only have one objection, and that is the horribly intrusive grand staircase, for which there, in my reasoning, no apparent reason, but it's there. And again, of course, whoever did it as well as you could possibly want it done. But somebody forgot to give the client a little hint of what more could be done with less. Next slide. Hillsborough Street, my favorite street almost in the world, starts at the state capitol, the city's finest, or among the city's finest buildings, has a formal area, even that 8-sided or 6-sided, I've never been able to figure out, hotel is sort of regal in its own way, tree shaded. And then reaching Glenwood Avenue, and it hits an auto-centric section. At one time, there were not only the two fast food places, Char Grill and Snoopy's, but 3, possibly 4 service stations. Now, of course, on the south side, there are some large buildings, but it still gives an interesting contrast along that. After you pass that, you come to a parkway right there in the middle of the city where St. Mary's is on one side and the garden apartments from the 40s or maybe even 30s are on the other side. And it curves around in a big sweep and arrives at Morgan Street and the roundabout I described earlier, which is a fragment of early 20th century Raleigh, including a number of old office buildings and a commercial building, all the way up to the building in which we find the players retreat. And along the way, it has another interesting contrast to tall buildings on the left and on the right, buildings set only 20 or 30 feet from the street, but gives the street a decidedly, maybe even some form of loggia. I'm not taking that too far, but a possibility. Then Funky Town and the town gown section along NC State over to Meredith College and then to the city's other fantastic building, the Dorton Arena, which must certainly have the finest name of any building of its presence in the world, not named for a governor or a congressman or even a person who was a cabinet member in a state government, but the fairgrounds manager. I think it's wonderful. Next slide, please. So what am I after having happen here? Well, I wish I knew exactly, but I'm trying to give you 3 quick ideas here. A visual resource inventory of what's going on in Raleigh and Fuller Heights. Some thinking about how your role could be one of assessing what's submitted in a visual impact assessment, just like we have environmental impact studies, statements. And then maybe to get an idea of what the mechanisms would be on a given street, find a way to do a prototype with, because we're talking mostly streetscapes here, and the buildings, of course, along them. But I have a feeling we could use, although I think many of these things fit many of the things that you would be working towards, like transparency and the nature of the street and those things. But mainly a different take on reinforcing the urban pattern, because now you're reinforcing the urban pattern near a park. And it may take something more to figure out exactly what that means. I think we all have a pretty good idea what it means generally, reinforcing the urban pattern, but what does it mean when you add the component of the kind of park area, which is essential to the park that I've described? So way more time than I ever dreamed you'd give me, but I'd love to see if you could consider a working group or an individual who wanted to take this on and then report back to you. I have 2 supplemental documents that I will send you if you would like to have it. One is on what an integrative neighborhood and park might consist of and what a successful one would be. And I'd be happy to send that to Lee and the chair to determine whether that would be something you feel the members would find useful.
Doug, we appreciate you taking your time to put all this together and put all the thoughts together. I think this is great. I think this is something that is good food for thought. I know that several commissioners have kind of dabbled more than others, but in with Dix and been involved kind of with, you know, outside of the commission. But I think it's a good food for thought about how maybe we could be involved a little bit more. And I think it's also a good timing, as you know, we're only a couple weeks away from our virtual yearly retreat, where we can really sit and talk about this a little bit, which I propose that we do. Carter, Lee, give it a little bit more thought on how we maybe could be involved with this a little bit more. And yeah, I'm anxious to kind of and just hear what other people's thoughts are within the commission. But we have, definitely appreciate your time.
I'm very happy to do it. My old boss, Janet Cowell, is now the president of the Dix Park Conservancy, and she is an asset manager. And the park is the number one asset, and the number two asset are these areas outside it. Then that's the two physical assets. The operating assets include the city staff, which is tremendous, and the design firm, great, and the leadership is wonderful. But it also organizing assets include the Appearance Commission. I'm convinced that there's important function there. Thanks again for letting me take so much time. And I'll be sending this off to Lee, and you can instruct her what to do with them. I hope you'll find them useful.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions before Doug leaves from the commission? Any questions or thoughts just read off? Okay. Well, Doug,
hey, this is Jake. Just want to say thank you for the time and the idea. I think it's excellent, and like you said, it's great timing, Corey. I could see us playing a really important role here, similar to what we've played on other corridor studies like Avon Ferry, but perhaps even a more active or creative design role, given that half of the edge is still being planned, which is the park side, and obviously the other side of the edge is also very much in flux and with a lot of ideas being proposed in the future. So I think having some kind of guiding vision and ideas for that space is really important, and it'd be great to see how we can be a part of it. So just thanks for bringing this up. I think there's an argument to be made that Lake Wheeler, this section of Lake Wheeler, is the most important corridor to the future of the city. There's a number of other corridors we've got going on right now in planning stages, but I just think that it really is important. It's important to get it right, and so I think the key questions for us are going to be how can we play a role, what role makes sense for us, and how does this align with the existing edge study that's going on. So what role does the commission play versus the planning and design team that's working on the edge study versus the park side and other community members and other processes. So I think that's something we can dig into hopefully at the retreat. But if there's any other kind of background info that we should know, or maybe start preparing, Carter, that you're aware of, just to kind of get us up to speed on potentially where things are today and where we might be able to play a role, that may be a helpful first step in just getting the ball rolling, assuming that other people besides me think this is a good idea. But otherwise, I'll do what I can on my own. But I think having a small team working on this could be really interesting. So those are my thoughts, and thanks again.
Well, thanks everybody. And Carter, I'm going to be bothering you because I love what's happening at Oberlin Road. That is huge and equitable, and I think you can't ask for more than that. Thanks again, everybody. Bye now.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jake, for your comments. I know that one of the very first meetings when you became a commission member, you were talking about Dix, so I know that it is important to you as well. So
that was the first time, won't be the last time.
That's right. All right, so I believe if there's nothing else, we have an agenda to approve.
This is Carter. I just want to let you know that we can prepare some information. I'm not sure if we can get someone there from comp planning to talk about Dix, but we're happy to kind of give you an update on that at the retreat and see ways that you can get more involved. And I know that's something that the commission members have enjoyed, especially with Avon Ferry. I think you provided a really, there's a value add there with your work. So we don't have a formal way to get you involved, but if that's something you want to ask council, we can do that. And we can also talk to the project team with Dix. Lee kind of sits on that group with staff. So we're happy to get you guys together.
Great.
But in terms of, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think it would be a great opportunity to get the Appearance Commission involved. I think that it could benefit a lot from that.
Great.
Yeah, and if there's any documents that you could share before the retreat that we could look over, that'd be helpful too, just wherever the design team's at.
Great. Okay. Any other comments? Agenda.
I'm sorry to say that we did not actually attach the minutes to the agenda. I apologize for that.
I've been looking.
That was me. Sorry. We will have those up for the next meeting. I apologize.
Okay, we will approve those at the next meeting. Any other thoughts from the commission before we adjourn? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time tonight, and look forward to seeing you all in a couple weeks when we do have our yearly kind of virtual get together. So it'll be great. Appreciate everybody's time. We'll talk to you soon. See y'all.
Thanks everybody.
Good night.
Bye.